All right, so we're gonna do one final painting from life here, one still life. And this one we have two objects here that have light kind of bouncing off of each other because I want to show you that sort of relationship as we talk about light here. So, as usual, I'm gonna start with the background. We're gonna keep it pretty loose and simple, and then slowly work our way to more detailed and more refined. I'm gonna get, we're gonna go with this soft brush for now. I'm just gonna bring up the hardness a little bit so it's not as soft. And we are going to start picking some colors here. And as usual, I'll be kind of going back and forth, testing them out. Perfect. Like I said, we're going to start with the background and then work our way to the foreground elements. And then also, before I forget, I'm going to turn my drawing layer to multiply. And I'll just turn the opacity down a bit. There we go. All right, so we have that. That's going to be enough for starting off with our background. I'm going to take my eraser tool really quick and just clean up this edge over here along where our reference photo is so we don't have as much overspray. And we'll obviously come back and sort of refine it a little bit more later, but for now, that gives us a good starting point. I'm going to make a new layer here. And we're going to come in here now and start blocking in our basic colors for this ball and the book itself. So let's go ahead and do that, and I'll talk to you guys in a minute. All right, so I'm still working on blocking out, but in order to make this easier for myself, I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to paint the ball on that new layer so that I can sort of easily go back and forth between painting on the book and the ball without having to worry about painting over what I already did as much. So for example, when I go in to paint the shadow on the book here, I can paint it behind the ball layer. It'll be a lot easier than having to try and get my brush around the ball shape without breaking the outline. So just wanted to share that quick tip with you, and we'll go back to the time lapse. All right, so I'm gonna call it good for our basic blocking out of colors, and we're gonna start to work into a little bit more refined areas. We're gonna start to blend our shadows, probably start working in some highlights. We're still not gonna go to the fine details yet, like the gold foil on the book, or the little highlights on some of the individual page corners, things like that. But we are gonna start to get a little bit more refined. So luckily, because I have these on 2 separate layers now, when I go to do the book, I can paint the shadow in there very easily, and I don't have to worry about getting the ball at all, getting in the way of that. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and go back to our time lapse, but I will talk to you guys in a minute. All right, so we've gone through our next step, our next layer of rendering. The last thing I need to do is kind of tighten everything up and get our finishing touches. So this is going to include all the highlights on the ball, on the gold. There's this sort of gold foil on the book cover. I might not do all the detail on that, but I will at least do like a bar of that around the book. Any final, like the corner of the book edges here where we want to pick out a few pages, as they kind of round that corner. And then I'll tighten up the background a little bit as well. So pay attention, especially, I want you to pay attention to this reflected light here. So the shadow of this ball as it casts on the book is pretty dark compared to the shadow of the ball itself, because the ball is a much lighter material. But also as the light bounces off this book, it's going to hit that ball and it makes it the same color as the ball. And same with down here in the shadows, the reflection is the darker red instead. Same with, you could see a little bit here on the gold, there's a little bit of red on the side facing the book as well as over here. And then some parts it gets really orange. That's because that is the gold reflecting off of itself, and it's going to get even warmer than it already is. So just some things to keep in mind. Let's go ahead and jump in, and I'll talk to you guys in a minute. All right, so here we are at the finished product. I didn't do all these little sort of markings in the ball because that would have taken too long, and just wanted to focus on the lighting here, not so much the texture of things. But a couple things I wanted to point out that when you paint this, you want to pay attention to. One is that this gold foil around the book, the way that we can tell that it's gold is because of the way that it responds to light differently than the texture of the book cover itself. So for example, in certain areas the gold gets pretty bright, and in other areas it gets a lot darker than the book because it's much more reflective, so it's reflecting its environment a lot more strongly. Also down here, the light where the gold is reflecting off of itself gets really saturated, especially where it's also reflecting off the book. But in other areas, it's actually pretty desaturated. A lot of times when we paint gold, we think of really bright yellow or orange, but that's not actually really the case most of the time. So just a couple of things I want to point out. I took some liberties and just sort of blended the background together and didn't paint some of this other stuff in here, but there you go. That is the finished product. We can go ahead. I'm going to turn off our reference layer, and I'm just going to crop this whole thing. And there we go. That is our finished painting. So that is it for this lecture, and I will see you guys in the next one.